Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jim. Thank you so much for joining me. Today we're going to be taking a look at a budget build and something that I think every collector needs to have in their collection, whether you're going to use it for carry, whether you're going to use it for home defense, whether it's just going to sit in a safe and go to the range every now and then. I think this is one that most people are going to enjoy. Now, very quickly here, let's go ahead and show you that this is completely clear. No ammo anywhere near me. This one's going to be a little bit different than most of your micro compacts, and I'll break that all down when we get to the tabletop portion of this. PSA has done a fantastic job with these, both in the ergonomics as well as the overall function. It works great, it feels great, and it honestly carries pretty darn great too. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I like, what I don't like, what tiny little things I have changed to make it just a little bit better, and see if this is going to suit your needs and if maybe this is something you should be considering for the near future.
In today's economy, brought to you by the lefty party, you have to shop smartly. If you don't, you'll be broke. And we all know a few folks who have been down that road as of late. In today's unsure times, all we see are more crimes. Could be day or night times, it doesn't even matter anymore. So do you break the bank, spend more than you make, just to feel more safe? You know you trust Glock like the tick of a clock. They've always been tough, but your bank account's rough. So what's left for you now? Another gun made in Turkey. Budget doesn't have to be a bad word. Some guns have crossed the higher quality line and made that line blur. Now long ago, under 500 meant a turd, but this is a different time, a different era. You can spend less and look in the mirror. No shame and no guilt, you found some that are quality built.
This is not going to correct bad habits. If you feel that when you're shooting a 9mm, it's uncontrollable and it just keeps slipping out of your grip and you have to keep doing this, re-gripping after every shot, that's your fundamentals that need to be worked on, not your equipment. What happens when you marry a Glock 43X and a SIG P365 X Macro? You get a comped slide micro barrel SIG that feels like a Glock in the hand, and well, it's pretty damn wonderful. This gun right here solves a few problems that some people have. Before we get into that, just want to show you guys empty mag, empty chamber, completely safe. Some of the problems that people have are, well, some are just quote-unquote poors who can't afford a Spectre comp or a X Macro comp or most other SIGs. SIGs are expensive, man. There's just no way around it. This is about half the price of a Glock 43X MOS. It also solves problems for people who hate how skinny the P365 grip is. This size fills the hand much better. To give you an example, I have my P365 XL Spectre comp right here, and I actually had to swap out my grip module for the Wilson Combat because the Wilson Combat is swelled on the sides and a little bit longer front strap to back strap to give a little bit more of a hand fill. Otherwise, my fingers just wrapped all the way around it. It's crazy. Now, sometimes I like that, but honestly, for the most part, it just feels like I'm over gripping the gun somehow, even though I'm not. Now, for those people who hate a Glock grip angle, this one isn't quite as aggressive. People who hate the blocky grop, try to say that 3 times fast. blocky Glock grip feel. Yeah, how about that? This one is much more rounded off, especially up here in the front strap. It's nice and rounded. Everything is contoured nicely. And for me, the big deal is this also has some palm swells in it. So it's not just flat, and rounded at the corners where they meet. This has got just a little bit of contouring and curvature all the way around, and it feels a lot better in the hand. And it's still not a CZ or anything, but it still feels way better than a stock Glock. And another big deal for a lot of people is the fact that this has a steel guide rod, so no cheap plastic that flexes under fire. Now, I knew I wanted the Dagger Micro as a budget build, but once I saw the ported slide option, I went that way. Not truly fully realizing how large it would be overall. This is, in essence, the same size as a Glock 48 now. What I wanted, and the reason why I was shopping for the Dagger Micro, was because I wanted that same teeny tiny compact size. But once I saw the C1 slide option, it just kind of pulled me in that direction because I really, really like the idea. And the majority of my handguns are either ported or they're compensated. So I like the idea of having it, and it fit in with the rest of my collection. The dimension numbers, as I read the specs, didn't register in my lizard brain. It was very easy to read and see how long the slide was and how tall it was from base plate to slide top, but it just didn't register. So to give you a comparison up against a SIG P365 XL, so let's bring it muzzle to muzzle. I want you to see right here the length of the grip is substantially longer. This is more like a macro. And muzzle to muzzle here, you see that it is also quite a bit longer in the slide length as well, even though the barrel lengths are pretty much identical. So this is not a tiny little micro, in all honesty, once you've made that conversion. Now, the idea wasn't to go Glock 43 size, 43X. So I wanted that longer grip length because that's going to feel better in my large hands. So what I'm going to end up doing, I love this slide. I love how this gun shoots. It's been fantastic and it's been reliable. Is I am going to buy a standard Dagger Micro slide and barrel, whole top end, and have that as a backup. So I could just simply pop this one off and put the other one on for the time that I want to carry something super small. Because what the problem is with this, and this is not problematic on its own, it's a problem for me in my collection because I already have this niche filled. I have my XL Spectre Comp. When I've got my 17 round magazine in here, it feels pretty much identical to this size here. And I have, I have a few pistols in this size range, and I'm completely blanking on them for some reason. I apologize. My RX, the RX Delta X that I just reviewed, that also fits within this size range, being very, very skinny, very slim, and being overall a Glock 19 size in length and height. So I have that well covered. And I just up-converted, or I'm in the process of doing it right now. I'll show you the shambles that it's in. I'm up-converting my standard original, little teeny tiny original P365. I'm up-converting that with Shalotech, with the Shalotech grip frame, the Flex P365 frame, and this slide, with the Parker Mountain Machine barrel and comp. So I'm going to have, again, pretty much the same size. Actually, I haven't put these side by side to see what the real differences are going to be. So the grip is going to be just a little bit shorter. Yeah, so it's really going to be comparable. Don't activate your light. It's going to be comparable to the XL. So I still want one that's nice and super duper teeny tiny. And I'm just not finished with that gun. I've still got to put this trigger in it and do my final fitments and all that kind of good stuff. And then that's probably going to end up being, assuming it ends up being reliable, that'll probably end up being one of my main carry guns. The other idea behind this was I wanted a budget build. Typically, I spend a lot of money on my handguns, and then I spend a lot of money on frivolous things on top of it. Do I need a red dot? No, but I typically spend between $350 and $600 on a red dot. Do I need a light? Yeah, kind of. I'm one of those people that I really do feel like I want to have a light on anything that's going to be possibly used for home defense and possibly used to carry out at night. So I like having a light. So there's another, $200 to $350 on a light. And then I'll do little things like triggers and things like that. So yeah, you end up spending a decent amount of money in your total package. So I really wanted to have something that I knew was going to be reliable and that I knew was going to be fun to shoot and could still be had for a very, very low price. Now, YouTube has all these weird things going on where you really can't talk about pricing and things like that. However, this is so significantly less than the Glock 43X MOS, which I have owned, that it's almost silly to even think about buying the Glock. And I think the only reason people still need to buy the comparable Glocks, well, number one, they don't offer anything that has the ported slide. They used to make the 19 and 23 C. They had the two little Magnum ports cut into the barrels. But they don't offer anything like this right now. But the only reason to really buy a Glock these days is because a lot of these other brands, like the PSA Daggers, for example, have not been around long enough to give you a proven history of reliability in the same way that Glock has. I can give you plenty of my personal experiences. This thing hasn't given me a single hiccup. I haven't known anyone that owns one that's had a single hiccup. But that's not historical data. You need data. You need a history in order to say, this is an absolute Glock killer. This is going to replace Glock. Can't say that yet. Give it a decade or two, proving its reliability, and then sure. But for me, on a personal level, having this personal experience with this gun, I don't feel a need to ever buy another Glock. Between owning this and owning my two Shadow Systems pistols, Glock is completely irrelevant to me, which sounds weird for me to say because I've always been a Glock fan. I've always carried Glocks since, 91, 92? Always loved them. But it can get better. And you can spend a lot less money. Back when I was really starting out in handguns in the early 90s, you could go to a gun show and you could buy a used Glock 19 for about what this sells for brand new. Now, those days are long gone. A used Glock 19 today is going to cost you $500. Well, that's what they used to sell for full retail brand new. This is such an insignificant cost. I've never been one to say I'm going to go cheap on a gun because at some point I may have to rely on this to defend my life. I made the same choice with the Optic. I usually spend so much money on my optics. They're always one of my priorities because I like having optics on my carry guns. Do I need it? No. And there are some that I've carried without the optic, even if it was an optic-ready pistol, because I really like the sights that were on them. My CZP07 right now, I don't feel the need to go out and have the slide milled custom to put a red dot on it because I enjoy shooting that with irons. I don't necessarily need to have a red dot on there. But the ones that are optics ready, like this, again, establishing more value, this is optics ready, and it's direct mount, no plates, no BS. So I spent as little as I could to get a decent quality reviewed optic. This is the Siley Cat Pro. Difference between the Cat and the Cat Pro: the Cat Pro has a side-loading battery. The Cat has a battery underneath where you have to take the optic off. I'm not a fan of that. And you know what? It's handled the recoil just fine. It's never stuttered. It's never fluttered. It's never lost zero. So I have no reason to complain. I think it was like $150 or something. Like stupid, crazy cheap. The trigger from Overwatch Precision was as much as this optic was. The light costs more than that optic did. So for me, this is a budget build. It's a nice budget build. When we talk about the basics of the gun, one of the things we have to discuss, of course, is going to be the magazines. And are they reliable? So far, so good, man. No complaints. So what you're getting a metal magazine and a sleeve over the front that's done in polymer so that they can use a polymer mag release. And these are slick, man. They glide in and they drop right out. No hang-ups, no issues, no worries. They fed reliably. The one knock I really have on this gun is it only comes with one. Yes, I understand it's a budget-oriented pistol, and that's where they're saving some of the money. So that's kind of a drag. Now, people bitch about the trigger on the daggers, the Dagger Compacts, and the Dagger Micros, but it honestly was not awful out of the box. It was slightly better than a stock Glock out of the box, and it definitely had a crisper wall. Definitely had more of that wall definition. But I don't love hinged trigger shoes, and that's what it was. So the safety, I think I have some B-roll I can roll in on here where I had taken a quick video to do a back-to-back comparison of the Overwatch Precision trigger and the stock. And I just didn't like the hinge trigger shoe. Just wasn't a fan. I would much prefer to have the little dingus on there. A little bit longer of a reset than I would like. But man, very crisp, very loud wall. That is a very, very stout wall. Now that unfortunately gives you a higher poundage trigger break than you might want. That is right at 5.5 pounds, man. But you have, with this trigger, almost no take up. It's very, very little movement to get to that wall, and then you're at it, and it's like a light switch. Long reset, tactile, loud. You won't miss it. Now, a lot of people are going to wonder, does this whole comped slide thing work? Yes, it works exactly as well as the SIG does. Is that a major, huge difference? For a lot of people, no. Here's the aggravating thing about YouTube. You get a lot of people that come out that don't have a lot of experience in something, and they go out and they review a product, and they have this feeling that they're the expert, and they'll give you all kinds of untruths, mistruths, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but one of the biggest things I see on this, and there's a handful of videos out now on the C1 version, and they say, oh, yeah, the comp slide doesn't really make much of a difference. I almost can't feel a difference. Watch them shoot it. They're shooting, boom, boom, boom. You're not even activating the comp. Unless you understand how a compensator works, maybe don't comment on it. What you should be doing at the minimum, controlled pairs, double taps. Do a bill drill. You're going to feel that difference then. Now, again, it's not a night and day difference. No compensator, no amount of ports is going to make up for a bad grip. The other thing is they always say, oh, it doesn't make a real difference in recoil. No, it's not supposed to. This has almost nothing to do with recoil. It's about muzzle flip, and muzzle flip and recoil are two distinctly different things, and they're always mixed and matched. What this is doing is it's expelling gases directly upwards as that bullet is leaving. Now, it's already left the barrel, so you're not losing velocity. There was something else that I saw somebody talking about. Oh, it lost like 33 feet per second. No, it doesn't. Compare this to a 43X. Don't compare it to a 48. They're comparing it to a Glock 48. We got a Glock 48 has another, I don't know, full inch of barrel. Well, yeah, it's going to have less velocity than that. But this is just a shorter barrel. It's a Glock 43X sized barrel. You have to do apples to apples. There is no loss on this system in velocity. This is also the way this is done. It's just redirecting the gases straight upwards, not up and rearwards. Up and rearwards would help push the muzzle back down for the muzzle rise and bring the whole gun just a tiny bit forward, and you'd have a little bit less felt recoil. Recoil is this. Muzzle flip is this. It's really time that people stop confusing the two. Muzzle flip is included within recoil. It is part of the recoil cycle. Recoil is not part of muzzle flip. I hope I'm saying that in a way that everybody can understand. So when you're shooting it, that little explosion that happens in here, you're going to feel that, okay? And it's going to come back into your hand, and it's going to pop up a little bit. Now, there are two reasons it pops up. Number one, the bullet escaping. The gases trapped behind that bullet are pushing everything back. It's already pushed the slide back. It's cycled the slide. And the other reason is when the slide comes back and reaches its furthest most point, that motion is stopping, and you're feeling that. That's recoil in a nutshell. Recoil will always encompass muzzle flip. Just having muzzle flip is separate from recoil. So, if you go back a ways, I've had ported guns since the early 90s. Very first thing I had ported, and this is back in days when you really did have to send out to a really high-end custom gunsmith to have something ported, because it just wasn't a thing that was going on. It was just starting to happen in competition guns at the time. And before that, I think going way back to the late 70s, you had the company called Magnaport, which was they would cut I think it was hexagonal, like a hexagonal slot on either side of the barrel. And people would get Magnaporting done throughout the 80s and 90s, and that was fairly popular. But the way things were done back then, it wasn't just a simple milled out recess. They were tuning where the gases were being vented. So, yeah, there was a way to slightly reduce felt recoil, as well as reduce the muzzle flip. On this particular system here and here, they're not designed to do that. There is no angle to that cut. That is just a straight cut. The bullet has already left the barrel right about, where is it at? Right there. The bullet has already left the rifled portion of the barrel here, and it's just floating in space in this expansion chamber, and it's just pushing the gases straight up. That's all it's doing. So to expect this to have reduced recoil, I don't know why you would have. It's not designed to do that. It's designed to slightly reduce muzzle flip. So, does it do that? Yes, it does. But it changes the shooting characteristics just a little bit. If you're used to shooting this, let's say it's a Glock 43X. If you're used to shooting this all the time, you're used to the way it kind of rolls in your hand, the way it kind of flips a little bit, and you feel that little tiny bit of punch that 9mm has in the palm of your hand. This will do that less. What it does is you almost feel like there's an explosion, but it's all the way up here, not back here, all the way up there. You kind of feel like boom, and it just kind of moves. It doesn't come straight back. It comes back a little bit, but it doesn't come straight back, and it's not going straight up. It's just kind of going, oh, like you feel that something happened, like you feel like a shock wave in your hand, but you don't feel it flipping nearly as much. It's louder to your ear, and it just has a different feeling in the recoil. So as we look at that and ask ourselves, is the porting working? Or is the comp working? It is. It's doing exactly what they intended it to do with non-directional ports. They're just there to push that muzzle back down a little bit. It's sprung quite heavy, and it's been reliable. It's been fantastic. One thing I do notice on this, as opposed to other factory ported, factory comped pistols that are coming out now, is it's not oversprung to the point where when that slide goes back forward, it's not causing that dip. Because that's every bit as bad as muzzle flip. If you're making that shot and you go from the dot just barely jumping out of the window upwards to now it's more controllable, my dot's staying in the window, but it's dipping down where it's going below the window, it's doing the same thing to you. It has the same negative effect, just in a different way. So this one is balanced pretty darn well. I've been able to run 115 grain through it just fine. A lot of times you get into these ported and comp guns, you end up having to shoot 124, 147. I've had no problem with 115, the lighter range loads. Hasn't been a reliability issue. Now, you're not going to feel as much of a difference on the light range loads. You go running some hot hollow points through there, your defensive ammo, yeah, then you'll start noticing that the comp is really doing something. But again, it's about your follow-up shots. You're not comping or porting a gun because it's going to make it softer shooting. That term should never even exist. Just like you'll never hear me say flat shooting. No, there's no such thing. No gun will ever stay flat when you're shooting it. Not even a 22. A 22 is going to jump just a teeny tiny little bit. Sorry, it's so easy to get hung up on terminology and listening to people just abusing and confusing words. And I don't care if they're wrong or not. It doesn't make me superior to them in any way. Only part that bothers me is if there are people watching them and they're relying on that information to make their purchasing decision on something that, again, is a very important item. This isn't a washer and dryer we're talking about here. And while you shouldn't rely on anyone, myself included, on YouTube to base your buying decisions off of, it's nice to know if you're watching someone, if they know what they're talking about or not. So if they start saying stuff like, yeah, man, it's not mitigating the recoil enough, and it's not flat shooting, and it's not soft shooting, all of that is irrelevant. You're not porting or comping a handgun to make it softer shooting. You're doing it to make it slightly more controllable for follow-up shots. If you're firing in a slow cadence, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this might as well not even be there. It might even be a distraction for you because of the odd way that it kind of fires in your hand. You'd be better off with a full-size, a compact the Dagger Compact. This is for follow-up shots. This is so you can shoot more quickly, maintaining the accuracy that you have already established for yourself through training and practice. This is not going to correct bad habits. If you feel that when you're shooting a 9mm, it's uncontrollable and it just keeps slipping out of your grip and you have to keep doing this, re-gripping after every shot, that's your fundamentals that need to be worked on, not your equipment. And we have all been there. Every single person that has ever started shooting. You start somewhere and you evolve. You practice, you train, you evolve. Don't rely on things like ports and comps. Now, if you've already got your fundamentals down, you feel that you are good at what you're doing, you're comfortable at the pace that you're shooting at, and you just want to make those follow-up shots a little bit quicker with the same degree of accuracy or more accurate with the rate that you're shooting at, then this might benefit you. Same thing with really good triggers. You hear a lot of people putting a lot of focus on triggers, man. And sure, I did it myself. But I don't always. There are plenty of times. Oh, here's a great example right here. Show clear. That's the stock trigger. Sitting here in dry fire, I do not like it. Don't like it. Just soft and mushy and ugh. But when I'm firing it, I'm able to find that wall. I push through the wall with no issues, and it doesn't seem to affect my accuracy. So you train around the triggers that you've got. You get to a point where you feel you're doing damn good, and you're thinking, I'd like to take that skill that I've honed and just fine-tune it a little bit. Just pull a tiny little bit more out of it. Then that's when you're going to mind your trigger. Very, very simple. I think the biggest thing that makes a difference on this right here in my hands is the optic. That doesn't mean that somebody can't shoot with the open sights. No. But this could be a lot quicker for you to acquire. And this isn't a video about optics in general or this specific optic. I'm just saying there are certain reasons to do things. If you want to buy the comped version, the C1 slide version, because you think it's cooler, there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a cool gun. I think this was cooler than the standard P365. That's why I bought it. I bought the Coyote version instead of the black with the gold trigger version because that version was $1,100 and this was like $800. Big difference. And I didn't think that this was going to make a big enough difference to spend that kind of money. I was right. It works well, but it's not a miracle, you know? Got off on way too many tangents there. I apologize for that. But let's talk about the specs very quickly here. Get that out of the way. So, of course, you're looking at a 9mm only offering from Palmetto State Armory on all of the daggers as of now in 2024. The weight is 17.4 ounces unloaded with an overall length from muzzle to slide plate of 7.1 inches with an overall width, the thickness at its widest point of only 1.1 inches. That's why you're buying this. 1.1 inches. Significantly slimmer than a 19, than a 26. It's just so much easier to carry. Overall height without the mag, so from the bottom of the grip to the top of the slide plate without an optic, is 4.7 inches. Barrel length is only 3.41 inches. The barrel is stainless steel with a DLC coating. Twist rate is 1 in 10. And believe it or not, the slide is stainless steel instead of carbon steel. Carbon steel is by far and large the most common to be seen in pistols. It's a polymer frame, just like a Glock. And you've got 3-dot white day sights on metal sights, not plastic. So again, another upgrade over Glock that you're getting for less money than Glock. The optics cut for mine, I think there are a couple of options on the C1s. Mine was the RMSC, and it is a direct optic mount. You do not need an adapter plate. So no tolerance stacking, no additional thing to go wrong. Now the PSA Micro slides are compatible with a G43, G43X, and G48 frames, and barrels, and recoil assemblies. However, the Dagger Micro slides are not compatible with the Dagger Compact and full-size S frames. That's about all I have to say on this. I've had a couple people message me and ask why I don't do any shooting in the videos. It's just a YouTube thing. I have a couple of friends who were wonderful enough to offer to me that I can come up and shoot on their property anytime I wanted to do these videos. But I said, you know what, I'm just going to do tabletop reviews because YouTube has pushed gun tubers to the point where they're not just demonetizing them, but deplatforming them, making up ridiculous rules that unless you're up on the rules as they change, you could easily violate a rule and not even realize it because you don't know the rule was implemented. And they're always stupid. They put you at the back of their algorithm bus if you're doing guns at all, but if you're shooting, absolutely they are. Then they're going to start hitting you up about what size and capacity your magazine is. Oh, is that a modified part on there? Is that a modified part on there? And it just becomes a real headache. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to have to deal with that. If at some point YouTube stops their demonization of gun tube channels, I will be making follow-up videos to all of my desktop videos and doing the shooting that I feel and is what a fully encompassing review should have. All I could do is just tell you my personal experience verbally. It shot good, it didn't shoot good, it took long to break in, it didn't take long to break in, it gave me a type 1 or type 2 malfunction after 100 rounds, or whatever it is. So, that's why I do it the way that I do it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this was a bit longer than expected, and there was a lot of belly aching and bitching about other people, unfortunately, but I kind of felt like I had to get that off my chest. So anyway, for those that have been considering this, if you're considering it against any Glock at all, buy this. Unless you feel that it doesn't have the historical reputation for reliability that we know that Glock has. If you're in that camp, then do what you feel is safest and just buy the Glock. If you're looking at comparing this versus this, I would go with this just because, man, there is so little difference in their operation, in the way they carry, how they shoot everything. The aftermarket is still larger for this, and it is so much less than this, like a ridiculous amount less than this. You could almost buy 3 of these for the price of this. Almost. Very, very close. It's ridiculous. The money you save between these two will pay for your optic on a regular standard, good optic, RMR, Holosun, whatever. It'll pay for a light, and it'll pay for a lot of practice ammunition and extra magazines. So that's the way I look at it. I'm perfectly happy with the choice that I made. Even though I knew I was going to be doing a budget build, it's still something that I actually even carry because I do enjoy it that much, and it is that nice. And that surprised me. And I like surprises like that. If you do too, then you should check one out for yourself. I will come back and follow up at some point whenever it is that I buy the standard size micro slide, top end, I should say, barrel and everything, and see how I like that on here because that's going to be this much less. And it's going to feel a lot more compact and probably a lot easier. Not, I would say a lot easier to carry, but in some situations, like say in a bag, this might actually become easier to carry. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you so much for joining me as always, and I'll see you on the next video.